Hi, Mystery Recapped here. Today I'm going to explain a horror movie called Your Host. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. The movie opens as a man named Jake wakes up and a strange game host congratulates him on reaching the end and being the winner. However, the host tells him to do one thing before leaving: choose one of the boxes and pull the rope. Jake hesitates a lot, but eventually pulls the string under pressure. Unfortunately, the host states that he has opened the wrong box and activates a small mechanism that fires a shotgun, which ends Jake's life. This movie brought to you by ChatGPT. Let's tuck in. Sometime later, we meet a group of friends consisting of James, Matthew, Anita, and Melissa, who arrive at James's parents' vacation home. It turns out to be Anita's birthday, and we soon learn that Anita and James don't get along very well. This is because of James's arrogant attitude stemming from his wealth, but they put their differences aside to enjoy the weekend together. In the evening, the group is relaxing by playing Truth or Dare, and James dares the girls to kiss each other. Which makes them uncomfortable. But James jokingly threatens to kick them out since it's his house, so the girls reluctantly kiss each other. Not long after, they hear a noise, so James decides to go out and investigate, where he finds a camera with a VHS tape. Anita has a bad feeling about it and doesn't want to play the tape, but James continues to act arrogantly and reminds everyone that this is his house. This leads to a huge argument, during which James mocks Anita's sick mother, causing her to become so angry that she smashes the tape. She also tells James that they are only friends with him because of his money, before storming upstairs. Later, Matthew approaches Anita, who says that her mother's condition continues to worsen despite undergoing chemotherapy. She reveals that her mother has very little time left, even though she has done everything she could to save her, so Matthew offers her comfort. Sometime later, Matthew is cleaning up the place when he notices the camera with a red light blinking, implying that it is recording. He then looks for his friends and finds Melissa and Anita unconscious in their beds. Panicked, Matthew tries to find James, but all of a sudden something sneaks up behind him and injects him with something, which causes Matthew to lose consciousness as well. Sometime later, the four friends wake up chained in a room where the same strange man from the opening scene appears and sets up a camera. He introduces himself as the host and pretends that he's on a television show with his mannequin audience. The host announces each of their names and even describes their qualities and personalities as if he knows them very well, which leaves the group panicked. Next, the host says he will begin the first game, which is a twisted version of rock, paper, scissors, shoot. He plays with each of them and the round is won by Anita. Her prize is a choice between paper and shoot, and she stupidly chooses shoot. The host then gives everyone what they chose and shows Melissa a piece of paper, which she had selected. However, the paper turns out to be a sharp knife that brutally cuts her mouth. Matthew gets struck with a rock and James's fingers are cut by scissors. As for Anita, the host takes out a gun and fires at her, but it is empty. He then violently pulls her chain, slamming Anita against the wall and leaving her unconscious. This incident leaves the group shaken, but the host, who is an old man, continues to crack jokes amidst all the disturbing nonsense. An hour later, he returns and says he will give three of them a chance to get out without suffering, and they simply have to confess the worst thing they have ever done, warning that anyone who lies will die. And so, James is the first one to confess, and he reveals how he was once drunk driving and caused an accident in which a girl died, but he got away with it, and this never came out publicly because his dad paid a lot of money. Then Anita reveals how she was struggling to pay for her mother's treatment, so she created an adult website for herself. Matthew then confesses that he scams people online and how he convinced an elderly couple to give him all of their savings. As for Melissa, she reveals how she made a deal with bad people to keep her dog shelter afloat. It turns out there is a horrible man who illegally runs a pit bull fighting ring, so whenever the shelter has too many pit bulls, she sells them to this guy. Upon hearing this, the host says that one of them didn't tell the truth, and for that reason, the round is cancelled, and it's time to move on to the next game, which is the roulette of pain. Melissa is the first to participate, and the challenge is to view photos appearing in a viewfinder and identify which cities they are. Melissa ends up guessing the first two correctly, but in the third city, she guesses wrong, which causes her to lose the game. The others beg the host to give Melissa another chance, and the host surprisingly agrees. But as soon as Melissa presses the button on the viewfinder, a sharp needle shoots straight into her eyes, causing her to scream in pain while everyone watches in horror. Next, the host gives Anita a drill and demands that she pierce Matthew's ear in less than 20 seconds. Otherwise, she will die.
Can I just also play GeoGuessr, please?
No. Matthew begs her not to do it, but she realizes she has no choice and ends up drilling his ear while the poor guy screams in pain. She breaks the drill in panic, which upsets the host, so he curses at her and takes the tape of what just happened before returning to his dress room. Shortly after, the host returns to start a new game and says he asked 100 people which body part hurts the most, and they must guess which answer the majority gave. Matthew answers head, Melissa says knees, and Anita goes with stomach, while James says muscles. No one said balls? The host pulls out some cards and reveals that the lowest number of people said knees, which means Melissa lost the round. He then activates a machine that releases a giant blade, which appears above Melissa's head. Next, the host gives her one last chance to save herself. She just has to switch places with someone, but all her friends refuse to sacrifice themselves for her, so in the end, the blade descends and splits poor Melissa's head open, while her traumatized friends scream in terror. The host then takes the tape and returns to his dressing room, where he makes a cut on his face. Sometime later, the host returns to the group with a TV and brutally shows how he tortured and killed a woman. He then approaches Anita and immediately removes his mask, and she recognizes him and says sorry. Here we also learn that the multiple cuts on his face are a sign of all the people he has murdered. After the man leaves, Anita says she lied about the adult site because she actually did something much worse. James says the host's face looks very familiar, so Matthew explains that the man is a popular game show host, Barry Miller, and that Anita used to work with him. The scene then cuts to a few years ago, because this movie is definitely quality enough to warrant a flashback, where we see that Barry is a popular game show host and Anita works for his company. One day, Anita is seen with her colleagues, who turn out to be Rebecca, the same woman who was seen being tortured to death in the earlier scene, and Jake, whom we saw at the beginning of the movie. The three are discussing the case of a talk show host named Colin Piper, who is acquitted of harassment charges, and how the woman who accused him has become very rich with the compensation money. So, Jake and Rebecca urge Anita to falsely accuse Barry, claiming she can receive her six-figure compensation easily. But Anita hesitates, even though she is in dire need of money for her mother's surgery. At this moment, Barry approaches them to thank them for working so hard, after which he brings Anita a cake, as it is her birthday. They all begin singing, during which Barry touches Anita casually, but Rebecca yells at him to stop touching her, or she will report him. Barry awkwardly apologizes and leaves them alone, but after this incident, Anita accuses Barry of being a harasser upon her friend's encouragement. Barry loses his job at the company, after which Anita receives compensation for what she supposedly went through. In the present, Barry returns to the group, and James tells him that he knows what happened. He says that if Barry lets him go, he will ask his father to get the best lawyer so his image can be cleaned up. But Barry asks if James can give back all those years he lost, his career, and even his wife and children who left him. But obviously, James can't do that. So Barry proceeds and says they're about to start the next game. He then shows Anita her lawyer's head and demands that she eat his tongue. A horrified Anita refuses at first, but when Barry continues pressuring her, she eventually has to eat the tongue. During this time, James manages to break free from his chains and attacks the old man, but Barry suddenly presses something, sending an electric current through their collars, which knocks all three of them unconscious. Sometime later, they wake up, and James and Matthew are tied to a table, both with large abdominal wounds, and Barry says this game is his favorite. He announces over a loudspeaker that he has placed keys inside both men, but only one key will actually work, so Anita has to cut them open to find the keys, and when she refuses, Barry says they'll eventually die of starvation anyway. Hearing this, James tries to convince Anita to spare him and offers his money to treat her mother, but she recalls how badly he used to treat her. So Anita reopens James's wound and moves his organs around while looking for the key. After several seconds, she manages to retrieve it and try to open the doors, but to her shock, the key doesn't work, and Barry mockingly says the doors open magnetically. Soon enough, James dies due to bleeding, while Barry says he's going to start the final game called Last One Standing, which means one of them must kill the the other to be eliminated. Matthew then gets up and takes a knife while he confesses to Anita that he has always loved her. He tries to kiss her, but she pulls away, so Matthew asks her to promise that she will get out of this place. In a shocking turn of events, he suddenly cuts his own throat while Anita is left screaming in terror. She now wins the game, but soon the old man releases a gas that knocks Anita unconscious. When Anita wakes up, all the corpses of her friends are gone, and she begins walking around the building. She eventually reaches Barry's dressing room, where he has kept all the tapes of the people who had wronged him. Anita then grabs a knife for defense, and after cleaning off her blood, she reaches a room where Barry has left 3 boxes for her. He invites her to play one last game before she leaves and says there's no cheating or tricks. She just has to choose the correct box. Anita tries to convince Barry to let her go, since she is the only one who can give him back his life by admitting that she lied about the accusation. But Barry replies that it is too late for that and says if she wants to keep her mother safe, she has to finish the last game. Anita reluctantly agrees, and when she opens a box, a birthday cake is released. Just then, Anita pulls out the knife and attacks Barry, after which she runs away from the building. But the old man is smarter than her and electrocutes the collar she's wearing before dragging her back inside. Later, Barry forces Anita to put her face on the cake, but she refuses, thinking there might be a knife inside of it. However, Barry says there isn't and pushes her face in anyway, but nothing happens. Barry says that he has good news and bad news, and the good news is that she can go home, which really excites Anita. But the bad news is that the cake was coated with a layer of acid that slowly begins to burn the girl's face. This leaves her blind, and she begins screaming and crying in agony before she eventually dies as well. In the final scene, Barry is seen torturing the once canceled talk show host Colin Piper, who admits that he indeed assaulted many girls and paid them off. When he offers to pay Barry off, Barry proudly exclaims that people do not need his money, but justice. And the shittiest movie I've recapped in a long time comes to an end.